You cannot find perfect fulfillment in whatever floats your boat. The only way to find perfect fulfillment and perfect peace, this peace that we say we're fighting so hard to protect, the only way to do that is to align ourselves with divine design. You're triggering me. And it's that whole like protect your peace thing. But a lot of people are not protecting their peace, they're protecting their dysfunction. Listen, here's the thing. Genuinely empowered people empower people. So when you have women who are all about self-empowerment and they're castrating and disempowering men, then I'm sorry, but you are not a truly empowered woman, because a truly empowered woman is not afraid of the power and strength of a man. And then we start, healing the family unit, and then society is healed. But it's not going to happen if we choose the easy path that's comfortable and controlled, and we're all doing the hippie commune thing where we're all just living with our girlfriends and having children through IVF. It's not going to happen. Failure is a part of learning. Failure is a part of growing. Failure is a part of mastery. You cannot master anything that you're not willing to fail at 1,000 times. A woman can influence a man in a way that brings the king out in him. Or she can bring out the beast. It's a lot easier to point the finger and say, they're the problem, than look at ourselves and go, okay, what's coming up in me and how do I process this in a really healthy way?
We're in a time right now where women in general, many women, a lot of my friends, they do not want to date. They don't want to be made uncomfortable. They're really protecting their bubble of peace that they've made for themselves, and they don't want it disrupted.
And isn't there like a trend going on where like women are buying homes together and like doing IVF or adopting or whatever, like raising kids together? And basically it's like, I can have my dream life and I don't need a man because I can do this with my girlfriends. And it's not like they're not in lesbian relationships or even anything like that. They're just single straight women who don't want to deal with the headache of being in a relationship with a man. And so they're going about, finding a way to have children and then doing this communal living thing with other girlfriends of theirs who also want to have family but don't want to deal with men.
Yeah. The hippie commune, community living, I hear about it constantly, and that it is big dreams for women right now.
Big dreams.
Yeah.
That don't include men.
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember, but they're not lesbians.
They're not, but
they're straight. They just don't want to deal with men.
Yeah. They feel like they are better off without men. They feel they can do it on their own better without men.
What you said was so big too, because I feel like it was putting the whole dating conversation on pause, even just for a minute. The whole trendy, you got to protect your peace thing. Protect your peace. Don't let toxic family in. Don't date. Like anything that disrupts your peace, don't let it into your bubble. Protect your little peace bubble. That's actually really concerning.
Yeah.
It's really, I'm all about protecting your peace, but like it can be taken to an extreme where it starts to limit you relationally.
Mm-hmm.
And being in relationship means that your peace is going to be disrupted from time to time because people are imperfect. Relationships are not perfect. So to say we want to protect our peace, I think what we can say more accurately, it's not that people are wanting to protect their peace, it's that they're wanting to protect their sense of control and comfort.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can have even conflict. You can have a state of conflict going on or a difficult relationship issue going on. And you can have some anxiety and it can be stretching you. But even in that, there can be a measure of peace depending on your mindset, right?
And growth.
So, and keeping a growth mindset on it, right? And going, okay, what are the lessons that I can learn through this? We haven't really done an episode on triggers. I've been getting triggered a lot lately, actually. We haven't done an episode on triggers, and I've mentioned a couple of times that I would love to speak into triggers because in my coaching practice, I talk about triggers in a way that a lot of the women that I work with, both of you guys included, have said, I've never heard anybody talk about triggers from this point of view.
Yeah.
Because really the culture is don't let anything trigger you. Oh, that person triggers you. Cut them out of your life. Oh, you're triggering me. I can't deal with this. I'm not going to deal with this. You're triggering me. And it's that whole like protect your peace thing. But a lot of people are not protecting their peace, they're protecting their dysfunction.
And then when you cut out your triggers and you're living in this world of peace and calm and all about you, then when a minor trigger comes, you explode because you have no practice. You've isolated yourself so much. So it's almost like diving the problem deeper in the long run.
Because you're not building mental or emotional resilience or relational resilience. You're not building that skill set within yourself. Right? Like any health to be healthy demands a measure of stress.
Yeah. You grow in the depths.
And you need to put a certain measure of stress on your body in order for it to function properly. If you just lay in bed all day and don't put any stress on your body will decay. When we don't know how to manage stress well, because a lot of people I think are opening themselves up to unnecessary stress, like overstimulation,
Mm.
like constant noise. TV is always on, radio is always on because people can't be alone with themselves. And so they're constantly bombarding their space with noise and chaos because they need a louder chaos outside of themselves than they're experiencing within themselves. Right. It's a try to distract them. And so there's this measure of stress that's not necessary that people are like almost hiding in and they're normalizing as a lifestyle for themselves. But you can only handle so much stress. And if we're accepting that kind of stress in our life, then we don't have the energy, we don't have the bandwidth to handle the healthier stress, which actually would produce growth and resilience and personal expansion. And so the stress that we're tolerating in our lives really just keeps us stuck and in a place of constant self sabotage. So I have a question. When it comes to relationships, and I'm thinking about a relationship that I had experienced, you know about this one. It's about like a mentorship that I had a long time ago. How would you know the difference if you're dealing with an unhealthy person that maybe you shouldn't have in your life versus a challenging person maybe that you should have in your life, like you're saying, like that we should keep in relationship with and grow through that instead of running away from the discomfort, lean into the discomfort. Like, what is the difference? Yeah. Well, let me spin the question back on you. For you, what made you realize that that was a relationship that was not producing healthy fruit in your life? I feel like it was for me, it wasn't like really a safe space, so to speak, as like I couldn't come to this person and like talk or open myself up. I didn't feel like I could be vulnerable with this person. I guess I would say experienced a lot of like character attack and um not really much I don't even know because I feel like I don't even really like understand what that relationship ever really was. Like I understand it from point of view of maybe what that person saw it as, but I don't, like I only know what I've experienced, so I don't really know how to put it. So, what I'm hearing you say is that you felt like when you would go to this person, it was a mentoring relationship. So that's a unique dynamic in and of itself right there. Most people don't have mentors, right? Like
Mm.
that's a unique dynamic that unfortunately most people don't open themselves up to. But if we just pull away from that specific dynamic and try to make this relatable to the average woman who's listening right now, what I'm hearing you say is that when you would bring yourself, you would bring your vulnerability to the table, you would share yourself, maybe something you were choosing to do or something you were exploring or something you were processing through. The way that it was received by this other person was like you said, a character assassination. Like they would attack your character, they would attack your decision making abilities. I know that you and I had talked about it, and oftentimes you'd come back from conversations with this person feeling really small about yourself and having doubt about yourself.
Yeah,
Correct? Yeah.
right.
And there were times where you tried to express yourself to this person and share, like, this is how I'm experiencing you, and this is what I would like to change. But there was always a lack of accountability on that person's part. They always projected the blame onto you. So that's a red flag
Yeah,
right there. Like, that's a red
yeah,
flag. I mean, we're imperfect people. Like, people, we're gonna miss the mark with each other in relationship all the time, in marriage, in friendship, in parenting, in coworker relationships. Like, because we're just imperfect people, and everybody's, I think genuinely most people are just trying to do the best that they can. But the mark of a healthy connection that has potential to continue to grow is that you can get to a point where there's mutual personal accountability.
Mm.
yeah,
When you have one person who's always right and the other person's always getting blamed or being made to be small, that's not a dynamic that can allow either individuals. I mean, a relationship, period, is meant to help us grow. That's the purpose of relationship. We need relationship. We're hardwired for relationship. We're created by a God who is in relationship with himself. God said, let us create humans in our image and likeness, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, right? The Trinity. So we're created for connection. We're created for intimacy at a biochemical level, at a cellular level. We're created for it. We can't thrive apart from it. And so, for our basic human well being, we need that. We need healthy attachment. We need to feel seen. We need to feel known. We need to feel loved. We need to have a sense of belonging and acceptance. And then also, in order for us to flourish and grow, we need those relationships. And we don't need those relationships to be easy and peachy all the time. It's through the challenges, it's through the iron sharpening iron that we grow. And a lot of people, when they say things like, to go back to what Claire said, I'm going to protect my peace, and this person is robbing my peace. Well, actually, what you're robbing yourself of is personal development. What you're robbing yourself of is personal growth. What you're robbing yourself of is that compassionate inquiry of going, ooh, I don't like how I'm responding or reacting in this situation. Forget about the other person. What's going on inside of me? What is this bringing up inside of me? Right. And doing that work of refining ourselves. It's a lot easier to point the finger and say, they're the problem, than look at ourselves and go, okay, what's coming up in me and how do I process this in a really healthy way? And a lot of people don't have the tools to know how to do that. Talking about triggers, people want to avoid their triggers because nobody likes feeling triggered. We feel out of control. Maybe we feel a little shameful about ourselves by the way that we're reacting. When we're super activated, we're like, oh, I'm out of control and I'm acting like a crazy psychotic person. I don't want to deal with this side of myself. And therefore, I don't want the things that bring this side of myself out of me around me. I don't want this activated in me. This is ugly. This is shameful. This is embarrassing. This makes me feel weak and pathetic. And I don't want to feel that. I mean, if we're being honest, I just went through a weekend of being hyper triggered, and that's how I was feeling. Like, I was hyper triggered. I was highly activated and being extremely reactive. And once I finally came back to my senses, I was like, oof, I'm not very proud of myself. And I'm proud of myself almost every day. Like, I live with a healthy sense of pride because I've worked hard to become who I am and to navigate life the way that I do. But this weekend, I was not proud of myself. And I'm like, okay, this is what I forgot. This is what getting triggered feels like. It feels like crap. You feel like crap about yourself, and nobody wants to feel like crap about themselves. And it's a lot easier to point the finger at the person who's triggering you and say, you're the problem, than to take responsibility and go, oh, that was really ugly. That was really embarrassing. I can't believe I reacted that way. I can't believe I lashed out that way, or I said that thing, or whatever it is. But the trigger is never what's going on in the circumstances outside of us. Because Claire, Mariah, and I could all be going through the exact same external circumstances, and it impact all three of us internally in a very different way. So triggers have nothing to do with external circumstances. They have everything to do with the meaning that we attach to the external circumstances. And it's that meaning that we have to explore. And there's often, when you scale it all back, the emotion connected to that meaning is fear and shame, or fear or shame, or some combination of the two. There's something that we're viscerally afraid of, or viscerally ashamed of, or some combination of those two things. And then that's what catapults us into this state of hypervigilant control. Because when somebody's triggered, they're grasping for control in whatever way that they, I'm cutting you out of for me, I'm like, I'm done with you. I'm not going to be friends with you anymore. Like, I'm being extreme right now. I wouldn't say that to a friend, but maybe a guy that I'm dating who's getting, who's pushing my buttons in the wrong way. You're out of my life. No. Or whatever it is, the vows that we make, like, oh, I'm never going to talk to you about this again. That's a form of control.
Yeah.
Clearly I can't talk to you about this. And maybe we don't even tell the person, but we think it, well, you're just not a safe person and I can't talk to you about this. Whoa, right? That's a form of control. So anytime fear or shame get activated within us, the natural knee-jerk reaction, that survival instinct kicks in, that overrides us being able to be spiritually led and operate from a high level of consciousness. And we go into, I need to control the situation. I want to feel better now. So how do I make myself feel better? How do I make myself not feel this shame or not feel this fear? Because I don't know how to process the fear or the shame.
I
Yeah.
have a question. So where do you go from there? How do you process the fear and shame after, like, you value the relationship with this person, but you were triggered, you explode, you're overcome with guilt and shame? Where do you go from there?
You own it. You take accountability and you choose vulnerability. And I think that takes practice, and that demands a certain level of skill set as well, because that does not come naturally for most of us. That is something that we have to learn, and most of us have not learned. But, you know, so we're going to go here. So I started dating somebody because, dating app since November, and
Yeah.
there's been one guy that I have been quite focused on. He has my attention. He's got my affection right now. And we've been talking and dating for a little over a month. And we had our first argument. I'll say it was an argument. It wasn't even that big of an argument, but it was Tanya got really triggered. Tanya got hyper triggered because I haven't been in a relationship with a man in 11 years. So as much healing as I've done as a single person, and as much as I can live in a state of peace, and I have healthy attachment and, a healthy sense of self-confidence and all of this stuff that I've been able to develop in myself in my single version, there's a lot of things inside of me that haven't gotten triggered because I've been single. And so now that I'm dating, those deeper things that couldn't get triggered in singleness are starting to get triggered in dating. So I had some of that stuff come up for me this last weekend. And I mean, I don't like what it brought up. I felt like, I was like, who is this girl? I haven't seen this girl in years. Where did she come from? I thought she died a long time ago, but I was just like in a state of heightened anxiety. I wasn't I had so much distorted thinking going on. I was doing all or nothing, emotional reasoning, magnification, like all of it, catastrophizing, future fortune telling, mind reading. I mean, literally pretty much every single distorted thinking that you could possibly come up with just overtook my brain and I couldn't turn it off. And I was in a pretty hyper vigilant, triggered state for almost 2 full days, and talking with girlfriends helped de-escalate some of that for me. But then ultimately, it was having that vulnerable conversation with the person that I was feeling triggered by. And it took time for me to even get there. And I told him, I said, you feel like this big, scary man that I have to protect myself from. And he's like, but what did I even do? And he's like, I don't even know what I did wrong. And it's not that he did anything wrong. It's the meaning that I attach to what he did based off of past wounds, past painful things that I experienced in past relationships with previous men. And that's what triggers are. We take things from the past and we throw them onto the present and we go, this feels familiar to that. And therefore it's going to produce the same outcome. And I don't want to go through that again. So how do I protect myself? How do I control this situation? But I had to make a choice to be honest about my shame with 2 of my closest girlfriends and say, this is the state that I've been in for the last 2 days. And I'm embarrassed with myself. And I'm embarrassed with the way that I've been reacting. And I'm not proud of myself. And I don't even want to tell you guys what I've been thinking or how I've been reacting, but I'm going to confess it because I think that's the most powerful way to break free from the grip of shame is to do the opposite of what shame tells you to do. And shame says, keep it in the dark, keep it silent, don't tell anyone. So when you start hearing, oh, this is embarrassing, don't let anybody know that you reacted this way. Don't let anybody know that you did this. You have to do the opposite. You have to let somebody know. And then you bring that out and hopefully you're letting people know that are safe and healthy and supportive and know your heart and are not going to judge you or hold it against you. And then it's out in the open and it loses its hold on you. And then having to regroup. And that's not always easy to do. It wasn't easy for me this time. It really wasn't. I felt like I was all the way back in the beginning when I was first learning all this stuff,
Wow.
And it's such a good reminder because I remember probably 7 years ago, I had been doing well for, when anytime you learn something new, you do well for a while. You guys can probably relate to this, right? Maybe it's your distorted thinking and you're doing so well for a while. And then maybe something happens and all of a sudden you're like, and then it's easy to think like it didn't work or, I'm not doing it right. Or, oh my gosh, I'm regressing. I'm sliding backwards, right? And I remember hitting a point in my journey because it's been 11 years now that I've been on this journey. And so it was probably 7 years ago where I hit a point in my journey where it's like, I've regressed. I've totally regressed, But what the Lord taught me in that was, and he brought up, and I've shared this with you guys before, but he brought up the example of when the Israelites had been led out of Egypt. They'd wandered the wilderness. They were heading towards the promised land. And after 40 years, they're finally going into the promised land. And the Lord said, Tanya, they didn't take the whole promised land overnight. They crossed the threshold into the promised land, and then they slayed the giants territory by territory. And he said, every time you take on a new territory, it feels like you're starting over again, but you're not because you're building on the history of conquest that you've experienced before. So because I have that paradigm in my mind, I'm able to look at my very unbeautiful state of being this last weekend, the living beautifully coach, right? Who's not living beautifully. And I'm able to say, this is not regression. This is progression. I'm progressing. And see that. And this goes back to what we were talking before. Like I could so stay in my singleness. I could stay in my singleness and keep my peace and keep my comfort and keep my level of control. And, life is a lot easier when we do it alone. No kids, no husband, no boyfriend. It's just me. It's just me. I don't really get triggered by anything anymore, But that doesn't fulfill my heart's desires. We're wired for relationship. We're hardwired for intimacy. We're longing for it. Our society needs healthy family, and healthy family is a father and a mother and children. That's healthy family. That's the way God designed it. So I can choose to stay in the state that I'm in and be very comfortable and think I've mastered it all. Or I can choose to push myself further into the life that I'm longing for and have all this crap come to the surface and feel like maybe I've regressed, feel like this is really scary. And now I have all of these distorted thought patterns kicking in that I haven't dealt with in years. And I'm having to like slay these new giants that I haven't had to deal with in years. But that's the cost of progression. That's the cost of expansion. And so if we're not willing to pay that price, we're going to live a small, comfortable, and controlled life, and we will never become the fullness of what we were designed to be.
Amen.
Honest confessions from a life coach. Listen, I never claim to be perfect or have it all figured out. I've never said I have it all figured out. I just share from what I've learned. And right now it's a little messy. So
Yeah.
it's relatable though.
I think the
Definitely.
journey is so, it's like you take all this time to learn these new coping skills, thriving skills, healthy ways, but you have to apply them. That's a whole nother thing. And I think ideally, I know for myself, I learned so much and I thought, wow, like I have so much more hope for my future. And I do. I absolutely do. But also, I just had a moment where I missed the mark on something that I've dealt with that's come up in my life over and over and over again. And in the past, I would have been crushed. And, this time I still was a little bit crushed because I'm still learning. But I would have been in tears all day. And once I could kind of sit back and look at this situation, then I remembered, like, okay, we're not going to hit the mark every time. We are imperfect beings. This is something that is deep rooted in me that I am working at healing, and it's going to take time. And just kind of having that awareness, compassion for yourself. And next time it comes up, I'm going to know that much more. And then the next time, maybe that much more. And it may take me another 20 years, but I'm going up the mountain.
Yeah. Yeah. Because our society has such a high value for end results
Yeah.
and accomplishments and perfection, even though, we say like, you don't have to be perfect. Everybody's trying to be perfect, So there's this fixed mindset in society of I need to accomplish, I need to produce, I need the end result, I need to get to the destination. And that was a big one with you, Claire, like letting go of the destination and realizing this is just one long, never ending journey. And yes, there are thresholds because there's some people lean on the camp of like, well, I'm human and I'm never going to be perfect. And they're not even trying to better themselves. They use that as a total cop out. Well, I'm just human and there's grace and I'm never going to be perfect and Jesus loves me and, kumbaya. And then you have the other extreme of like people who are trying so hard and putting all this pressure on themselves to be this picture of perfect that they have in their own mind. But the reality is we're meant to live in the middle of no, I'm not perfect. I'm never going to fully arrive. I'm always in process. And there are thresholds that I will cross over and then I will not go back, right? There are things that I will overcome and I will not have to struggle with them again. There are things in my life that I've overcome. And even if this similar past trigger comes up in my world, it doesn't trigger him. It's lost its effect on me because I've redefined the meaning around it, right? But then, so there's thresholds we cross over, just like the Israelites, they would take a territory and then it was theirs. They had conquest. It was conquested. They had that land. but then they stepped into a new territory and they had to take that land. And so it's like this black or white, all or nothing thinking that so many people have around self-help or growth or whatever it is, but it's a combination of the two. Yes, we should be progressing and we should be overcoming, and it's a continual lifelong journey. But that doesn't mean that we're struggling with the same thing in the same way year after year, day after day, right? And I think it's the shame. It's the shame that keeps people from growth because, I can think of, I'll be super vulnerable right now. This was several years ago because, I have a high value for purity in general. Jesus, Jesus said in the Sermon on the Mount, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God." We talked about that just a few weeks ago. Like maybe if you're not seeing God, it's because your heart needs some purification. Like purity is so much more than sexual purity, but I also believe that sexual purity is a part of the purity package, right? So being a woman who has a high value for the sacredness of human sexuality, purity is a value, sexual purity has been a value of mine. And so there are parameters that I've created in my life to try to protect and guard and create, because I was abused as a little girl and I was exposed to pornography as a little, as a young woman. And so I had to heal that impure place within me. So it's been a lifelong journey, right? Of like breaking free from stuff. And I had been doing really well for a while. And this was probably 9 years ago. And then I had a slip up one night. I totally had a slip up. And the next morning, I could feel like shame wanting to come over me and swallow me up and be like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe you did that. You should be ashamed of yourself. You know better. How did you let that happen?" Like the voice of shame. But instantly, I was far enough in my relationship with the Lord at this point to where I reminded myself, God is not surprised. God knew yesterday that I was going to make this compromise before I even did. And his love for me today is the exact same as it was for me yesterday because nothing can separate us from his love. So I can let the voice of shame come in just like it did in the garden and cause me to conceal myself and go into hiding, or I can run into the presence of my Father and tell him, "I fell and hurt myself. Help me." And I did. And I remember in that morning, as I'm like doing the drive home, the drive of shame home, and I'm just like, "God, this is what happened. And I know you're not surprised. You knew it was going to happen before I did. And I didn't want this to happen. I didn't like premeditate that this was going to be the outcome of my night with this person. But how did it happen? Like teach me, right? That growth mindset. But you can't get there if you're letting shame talk to you louder. Teach me. Why did I make this choice? Why did I make this compromise on my values? Why did I put myself in a situation that I now feel shame about? Why did I open myself up to something that I ultimately don't want to open myself up to? Why did I allow myself to do something that's not in alignment with what I say my values are? Because you were relying on your own strength. It was pride. You didn't think you'd do it and you did it, but now you have the humility of knowing this is a vulnerable point for you. And so next time you won't rely on your own strength, you're going to have to come and rely on mine. And that was it. It was like just a father teaching his daughter a little lesson. Like he didn't shame me. He didn't make me feel bad about it. There were no long-term consequences to it. It was just kind of like, "Okay, kiddo, you're learning how to run and you fell. You took a real big nosedive. You scratched up your knee a little bit. Let's Band-Aid it up. And let's teach you how to not let this one happen in the same way again." So, but a lot of us, I think especially like people of Christian, because of the religious influence, we put this pressure on ourselves to like never miss the mark. But the only way that you can ever get better at hitting the mark is if you're willing to miss the mark.
Yeah.
And we got to get good at and gracious with allowing each other to miss the mark with each other. So it's not just me being gracious towards myself and, "Oh, it's okay, I missed the mark." Am I willing to be gracious with others when they miss the mark and I'm the one that gets hurt?
That's good.
Yeah.
And that's the work that a lot of people are just unwilling to do. And that's why they choose to live in hippie communes with their girlfriends and IVF children, or
Yeah.
to divorce, or to stay single, or whatever it is, you know? They choose the easy, comfortable path that gives them the greatest sense of control. That's not living.
Yeah. It's like,
And I probably should say something like, whatever floats your boat, everybody gets to choose for themselves what's right. And da, 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 da. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to say that. No, because there is a divine design to things. There is a divinely orchestrated order to things. It's not whatever floats your boat. It's not. You cannot find perfect fulfillment in whatever floats your boat. The only way to find perfect fulfillment and perfect peace, this peace that we say we're fighting so hard to protect, the only way to do that is to align ourselves with divine design. And divine design is not a bunch of hippie ladies living on a commune raising IVF children. No, there's nothing organic about that. Right. I can't believe I'm being this bold. Welcome to
I love
2026.
it.
There's nothing organic about that. There's nothing divinely orchestrated about that. That is man-made, human-made order. And long-term, and this is not Tanya's opinion, this is that study sociology, long-term, society suffers for it.
yeah.
Society is only as healthy as the family unit is. That's why there's such a war on healthy family. So yeah, I think that we do. I think that our generation, my generation, your generations, we need a little bit of a wake-up call. It's not about protecting your peace. It's about expanding your resilience and learning how to create peace in storms. It's not about shrinking back. It's about expanding and pushing forward. And you have to push through the uncomfortable. It literally feels like you're dying. You have to be willing to lose yourself if you really want to find yourself. And you can hold on to your ego, but you'll never live that spiritual life if you do it that way. And then you're not really living at all, because you're ultimately above everything else as spiritual being. So things ended well with the guy that I'm dating
Oh, good.
because we both decided not to bail. We both decided to have the uncomfortable conversation. We both decided to try to understand what we couldn't understand. We both tried to put each other in the other person's shoes. We both had the very messy and uncomfortable and anxiety producing conversation that felt like it was never going to go anywhere good until all of a sudden something shifted and breakthrough occurred. We both chose to do that. And there's growth on the other side of that. Personal growth for both of us, but then also relationship growth. Because now, like, I'm thinking, wow, we both could have chose to walk away, and we both chose to try to work through it. That builds trust. That builds attachment. That builds confidence. And like, oh, we had our first fight. We had our first argument, our first moment of major disconnect, and we were able to find our way back to each other. And not just rush it all under the rug and act like nothing happened. We were able to do reconciliation work. We were able to do the repair work. We were able to learn and grow through it, not just avoid it or dismiss it or minimize it or whatever, not patch it up with a sex band-aid, because that did not happen because your girl's practicing purity. practicing, very much wanting to master. So,
And you
you
probably
know,
know each other on a deeper level now. You're probably like, wow, I see the heart of this man. Like, you see how he responds, how he's willing to listen to you if you're coming to him. And he's listening and then responding, and then he sees you listening like that. I think those are maybe some of the steps to know I do choose to move forward with you when you see those kind of, maybe we'd call them green flags from someone.
Yeah. But listen, I understand why women would want to be single for their whole lives. And, I understand why that feels so enticing. I get it. But it's a deceitful counterfeit to what is truly rewarding and satisfying, you know?
I'm just thinking of something. What do you say to the woman that in her heart has felt like she has tried and tried and like just running into unhealthy relationships over and over and over again, and she wants to give up? And so that lifestyle is looking very shiny to her of isolating. What would you say to her? What could be her steps?
I would say I'm looking up a quote really quick because I don't want to say it wrong. Maybe it was Thomas Edison, and he said, "I have not failed 1,000 times. I have found 1,000 ways that do not work," on his journey to discovering the light bulb, right? So he didn't look at it as failure. He was like, "Okay, well, now I know that that doesn't work." First of all, we have to and this goes back to the shame, fear, control dialogue, but and the growth mindset, like we have to reframe our relationship and judgments around fear. We have to reframe our relationship and our judgments around failure. I think it's Max Lucado that wrote a book called Failing Forward. Highly recommend that book. I read that book and it was very paradigm shifting for me in my relationship with failure because you can't get really good at anything if you're not willing to fail at it on the way to mastery. Right. So one, there's that, like just understanding, even with this guy that I'm dating, like it might not go anywhere. I'm putting my whole heart into it. I'm exploring it. I'm being vulnerable with it, but I could fail. This could end in failure. But is it failure or is it just more lessons learned as I'm on my way to succeed?
Mhm. Mhm.
Right. So part of it, I think I would say is we have to reframe our relationship with failure and we have to get really good at failing and just accept that failure is a part of trying. Failure is a part of learning. Failure is a part of growing. Failure is a part of mastery. You cannot master anything that you're not willing to fail at 1,000 times. And then the second thing I would say is maybe what you're doing is not working. Maybe you need to like for me, right? There was one point where my picker was super broken and I was trying so hard to make relationships work with men that were not capable of making relationship work. I constantly chose emotionally unavailable men, men who had addiction issues, men who were unfaithful, men who were abusive. That was the kind of man that I continued to find myself in relationship with. And it was just because my counselor told me my picker was broken. She's like, "There's nothing wrong with you. Your picker's just broken." So maybe your friend or whoever we're talking about, maybe her picker is a little bit off, right? Maybe she needs to do some healing work. I needed to do major healing work. And I'm still like trying to figure out if I can trust my picker right now. Like, am I picking okay? Is this okay? Am I doing okay? Just so scary. But maybe what you're doing is not working. I think it's very easy for us to blame the men. Oh, men are emotionally unavailable. Men are immature. Men are this. Men are that. Men are blah, blah, blah. We live in a society that is very like, it's the post feminist world that we live in. And there's a lot of male castration. There's a lot of emasculation. That's very normal. We're so indoctrinated into our cultural experience that we do it and we don't even realize we're doing it. But, it's easy to blame the men. I did that in my past relationships. Well, they're addicts, they're abusive, they're emotionally unavailable, they're this, they're that. But if I'm doing that, I'm never taking any accountability for my part in the equation. And so, one, accept that failure is a part of success. And two, get radically honest with yourself and try to figure out, what can I be doing differently? You said she's tried everything she can, you know, what are you still meant to be learning? What are you still meant to be healing? What are you still meant to be refining in yourself? Because there's so many beautiful things to discover about men and masculinity and how to appreciate these God creatures created in the image and likeness of God, like this divine masculine energy that they carry, and how feminine and masculine are meant to complement. Like that's like a never ending journey of discovery in and of itself right there, you know? So I would highly doubt that you've done everything you can and you just can't. Like, that's such a self-defeating narrative to believe. Like, there's just no way. So one, make peace with failing. And number two, learn something new. What can you do different? What can you try differently? If what you're doing is not working, right? That's the definition of insanity, is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. So maybe it's time to learn something new. And there's so many incredible resources out there. I have found so many incredible resources over the last decade that have helped me heal my mind around men and grow in my understanding and appreciation towards men, and understand how to better relate with men in a way that draws the best out of them and not the worst out of them. And in this society, you have to actively do that, because very few of us were raised that way. And it's not modeled to us in the media. It's not modeled to us anywhere. Even in the church, it's not modeled to us. That's like a whole different, the submission culture in the church, that can be very damaging also. So you have to actively go after learning that. So if you want to be in a relationship, go after learning it. I've been listening to podcasts. I've been reading books. I'm like, okay, I'm in a new territory. I'm opening my life up to something that I haven't opened my life up to in 11 years. This is all new for me. It's all very foreign for me. I want to learn. I want to grow. I want to listen to other thought leaders. I want to go find out what I don't know from people who know more than me. And then I want to practice integrating it and implementing it. And I'm going to fail at it along the way. But I'm learning and I'm growing and I'm developing new skills. And I trust that in the end, it'll pay off. The same is for married people, though. A lot of people are miserably married. A lot of people are miserably married.
Yeah.
Or they're satisfactorily married, but they're not happily married.
Yeah.
If you're not happily married, figure out how to make your marriage happy. What can you do? Don't settle. Don't convince yourself you married the wrong person and get a divorce. Like, that's the easy way out.
Mhm.
No. If you don't know how to do something, learn how to do it. You don't know how to connect with your husband in a way that he can hear your heart? Learn how, and get used to failing, and give him grace to miss the mark, because you know what, honey? You missed the mark too. If you don't feel like your needs are being met, well, maybe it's because you're not even clear on what your needs are, and you don't know how to communicate those needs to him in a non-critical or condemning or castrating way. Maybe if you learn how to identify your needs and then how to bring those needs to him in a way that arouses and evokes and inspires him to actually want to provide those, because guess what? The instinct to provide in a man is so strong. If a man is not providing for us, chances are it's because we've done something to make him not want to. Men respond to women. Women are powerful. We're powerful. When God created woman in the Bible, this is like crazy, but like it says in the Bible, it says that God created for Adam a helpmate. Okay. Now you guys know where I'm going to go here, but before you knew where I was going to go here, when you hear God created a helpmate, what do you think? Like, what's the typical religious understanding of God created a helpmate for Adam?
Housewife.
Traditional.
The one who does all the house stuff, like it takes care of all the things while he goes to work.
Like, just this woman whose whole sole purpose is to dote on the man and just we're subservient. We're just meant to help him and do whatever, cook his food. Not that there's anything wrong with all of that. There's nothing wrong with any of that, but that's the definition that we create around it, right? Pregnant, barefoot at the kitchen sink, subservience, right? Even in scripture, when it talks about, wives submit to your husbands, it doesn't say women submit to men. First of all, it doesn't say that. It says, wife, submit to your husband. So women are not inferior to men. But in a familial context, there has to be one person that's ultimately held responsible for the well-being and direction of the family unit. You can't have multiple leaders. You have to, they're always, in any organization, there's only one CEO, right? Because there's one person that at the end of the day, A, has to make the hard choices, and B, is going to be held accountable for those hard choices. And so in God's divine design of marriage, he says, wives, submit to your husbands. But that doesn't mean be subservient. That doesn't mean that you're not a powerful person. It doesn't mean that you're not co-leading in some way. It doesn't mean that you don't have your own strength to bring to the equation. It just means that you bring your strength, you bring your take on things, you bring your point of view, you bring your needs, you bring your intuition, you bring all of that to your husband, and then you submit it to him. You trust him to make the best decision for the family and the direction the family is going, and that he's ultimately accountable to the Lord for it, and that you can ultimately trust the Lord, even if you can't trust your husband. But it's not about women being inferior. It's not about women being obedient to their husbands. What? No. It's not about a slave master relationship. It's not about being property or being owned by a man. Like, all of that was the religious infiltration. None of that was God's original divine design. So when you go back to Genesis and it says that God created a helpmate for Adam, the original Hebrew words there is two words, etzer kenegdo. And those two words, etzer kenegdo, are found 21 other times in scripture. And every other time those two words are found in scripture, it's to describe God himself. Wow. So if God is using self-descriptive words, God is Israel's etzer. God is Israel's etzer kenegdo. Etzer kenegdo is it's one way that you can describe the etzer kenegdo is it's a strength and a support that can come through for you in a way that no one and nothing else can. Strength, rescue, beside you, coming along beside you. I heard a rabbi teach on this one time, and he said God created woman as the etzer kenegdo, and a woman's role in a husband's life is to stand beside him and strengthen him and rescue him, and help him move in the direction God is calling the family forward in. But also, it can be an opposing power in a man's life. I will oppose you if you're not going in the direction God has for us. I will stand beside you, or I will come against you. That's what an etzer kenegdo does. It's not this subservient, whatever you want, honey. You can abuse me. I'll just take it because I'm submissive. No. An etzer kenegdo is powerful. Every time in scripture that those words etzer kenegdo are used to describe God, it's a time in Israel's history where they needed him to come through for them, or else they would perish. Wow. A woman can influence a man in a way that brings the king out in him, or she can bring out the beast. So if we don't like what we're getting at it, now don't get me wrong, there's a percentage of men in this world that are very unhealthy, and no amount of loving them well and none, right? Like, it's not our job to fix people. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying your average, healthy, well-meaning, good-hearted man and your average well-meaning, good-hearted woman, we can come together in a way that really complements one another and brings the best out of each other, or we can come together in a way where we're combating each other and we're bringing out the worst. And I personally think that women are the most influential power in the dynamic between a man and a woman. I think women are created by God's design to be more spiritually intuitive. I think women are created by God's design to be more emotionally attuned and to have an overall higher value for relationship. Just look at women and men. Just look
Mm.
at the difference. Most women are more spiritual than men. More women go to church than men. More women are in spiritual communities than men. It's a very feminine thing. It's a natural feminine thing. It's part of God's design. Relationship. Women are going to coffee with friends all the time. Women are doing girls' nights and girls' trips with girlfriends all the time. Men maybe have one or two guy friends that they'll do sports with or play video games with, but they're not like sitting around sharing each other's emotional attunement. They're not like, how are you feeling, bro? What's going on? Tell me all about your inner world. You know, maybe if they're lucky, they can do that with a woman in their life that they feel safe to be vulnerable with. But men, that's not their natural inclination. So I think in the dynamic of a male and a female, that's the strength that a woman brings to the relationship. She brings that spiritual leadership. This is what I'm sensing, honey. This is what our relationship needs spiritually. This is what I'm submitting to you. What do you think? And then he's the CEO. He makes the decision. Yeah, you're right, honey. Let's start going to church. Or yeah, you're right, honey. Let's start praying together. Or you know what? Let's do that Bible study. That's a great idea. Right? Yeah, let's do it. Right? Or honey, this is what I'm noticing in the kids. This is what I think the family needs emotionally right now. And then the husband can step up. Okay, here's the problem. You know, here, honey, here's the problem. I feel like the family needs this. And then in his masculine strength, he can think objectively and rationally about it and make a decision on what's the solution. How do we fix the problem? Men love to fix problems. We bring them the problem, they bring us the solution. But we have to learn how to do it in a way that inspires them. You know, part of the feminine strength, it's one of our superpowers that God gave us in our divine feminine, is we have the power to arouse. And a lot of women use that in a sexual way. But to arouse a man is more than sexual. It's like what I said, you can arouse the king out of him. You can inspire him in ways that nobody else can. But we have to learn how to relate with them in a way that arouses the best out of them and not the beast out of them, not the worst out of them. And unfortunately, our society, especially since the feminist movement, we've been castrating men. We've been disrespecting men. We've been cutting them off. We've been telling them we don't need them, and they need to be needed. They need to feel like they're winning. They need to feel like they're heroes. It's how God created them to be. So yeah, we can all live on a hippie commune without men and do IVF and do all that stuff. But gosh, we're just getting further and further away from heaven if we do. And I don't know about you, but I want to be a part of bringing heaven to earth. You know?
Yeah, I have something. It also made me think about men living out of their healthy masculine, women living out of their healthy feminines. When you rely on yourself, I think as women, and I speak from experience in this, once I started learning the traits of masculine, feminine, I was tapping into my masculine. And that was a time of life where I was so uncomfortable. Nothing was flowing. Nothing was going right in my eyes. Like I was so pent up. I had the weight of the world on my shoulders. And then learning that, yeah, it's not living out of what we are designed to flourish in. It causes unrest in ourselves by trying to do a man's job.
They're trying to be a man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And men and women, we can pull from the feminine or the masculine. And there's nothing wrong. Like, there's a time where we need to pull from the masculine. There's a time where a man would need to pull from the feminine and maybe be a little bit more nurturing with his kid or whatever. But it's when we start living from that place, like if I'm a woman and I start living where from constantly pulling from the masculine energy, which is a lot more forced, that will drain your soul. That will drain your soul because you're not tapping into your natural spiritual strength, which is your femininity. And so you're pulling from this masculine force and it's depleting you. Whereas if you learn how to tap into your feminine flow, it fills you and it sustains you, and you do get into this really beautiful flow. And yes, you can tap into the masculine when you need to, because we all need to kind of be able to go, between the two. But it's, what are you living out of? And unfortunately, I think because we live in a post-feminist world, most women are operating from a more masculine energy in their life. There's a lot of reason for that. A lot of us were not, a lot of women were abused by men. A lot of women were abandoned by men. There's a lot of pain, and there's generational pain that's been passed on through generations at a cellular level, right? So this stuff runs super deep. But I think for where we're heading as a society, like if we're truly bringing heaven to earth, this is a space where redemption really has to make its way through. And I think it's women learning how to step back into their feminine and trusting that as we do, men will naturally respond by arousing back into their masculine. Because I do feel like men are not men right now either. I mean, I'm in the dating world for the first time in 11 years, and I'm like, what has happened to the men? Right? Like, what? A lot of them don't have jobs. A lot of them are just sitting around. They're in their late 30s, early 40s, and they're like playing video games all the time. There's just an overarching lack of personal responsibility and purpose and drive and direction. And it's just not very attractive. But I think we've done this to them. Like, we've done this to them. This is the reality we created. And so if we don't like, as women, what we have created and what we have drawn out of men, then we're the ones that have to repent for the generations that have gone before us that got us into this mess. And we have to start. And I think that it's happening. I think that there's a move in our generations of women that are waking up and going, no, I don't want to be the man. I don't want to do it all. Maybe I can, but just because I can doesn't mean I want to, you know? I want to stand in my own power, and I want my man standing next to me in his, and I want us to be powerful together in our own unique way, and I want us to complement one another. I don't want us to compete against each other, combat one another. So I think it's happening, which is very exciting. And it needs to. It's the only way that we're going to bring heaven to earth, is as women get healthy in our own selves, and we step back into our hearts and we step back into our femininity, and then we allow room for men to find their way back into their masculinity. And then we start coming together and we start learning how to create healthy attachments, and we start learning how to have healthy relationships and good communication. And we start learning and developing these skills and the resilience that is required to develop these skills. And then we start, healing the family unit, and then society is healed. But it's not going to happen if we choose the easy path that's comfortable and controlled, and we're all doing the hippie commune thing where we're all just living with our girlfriends and having children through IVF. It's not going to happen. That's freaking hell on earth, literally. And there will be repercussions. There will be repercussions because of it. Mariah, what do you think? You've been quiet.
Yeah. Um, no, I mean, I agree with all of it. And I think over the years, I've definitely come to this place. Like, I wasn't always like this. I had totally the today's feminist mindset. And that is just because I grew up with basically single mom. I mean, she was in both masculine and feminine most of the time. She was the provider. She was the one I went to for like almost everything. Like, and just basically feeling and much being abandoned by man, like I saw how that, affected my life, and then just seeing mom as like sole everything. And we used to joke around when I was a kid, like on Father's Day, I'd tell her Happy Father's Day, because like she was mom and dad. And
Right.
so that's just how I grew up. And in my well, thank God, like I am in my 20s and I'm already at this point that I'm at now, because in my teen years into my early 20s, I was totally like against like the family unit thing because I just didn't know that it was even possible. Um, Men were dangerous, men were scary, and yeah, so now I'm glad that I got to this point because everything you're saying I agree to, but it definitely wasn't always like that. And I see where it came from, and I see now on the outside, on the other side, how, society, there is, like you said, there's just a lot of hurt. There's reasons to it. It's a lot of hurt from men, but also like it's just a cycle. Like we get hurt by men, so then we gotta be the men and hurt the men back. And then the men are off balance, the woman's off balance. It's just a lot of off balance, like so much imbalance. And yeah. eh. But such a good topic. And I totally agree where like women can be friends and, be cool together, but like all women trying to lead and like it's almost like the idea of like women rule the world, but that would be chaos. Yeah. So mm,
Yeah. No. Well, that whole slogan, like the future is female. I don't know if you, Claire, I don't think you were in the picture yet, but in 2023, I held a workshop called The Feminine Mystique. And we talked all about healing our femininity, restoring our femininity. There was a deep, deep discovery. I know you did the workbook, but for the last decade, God's been teaching me about this, about the difference between masculine and feminine. And so I've got so much information on this. And it was such a great workshop. But I made these little tote bags, and it said the future is FE+MALE, female. It's both, it's female and male, because we need a future that honors both. Listen, here's the thing: genuinely empowered people empower people. So when you have women who are all about self empowerment and they're castrating and disempowering men, then I'm sorry, but you are not a truly empowered woman, because a truly empowered woman is not afraid of the power and strength of a man. She sees the
mm,
value and the necessity for it.
Yeah.
And she is connected enough with her own self that she can actually soften around that and lean into it. She doesn't see it as a threat. A lot of these women, and listen, I was sexually abused as a kid. Like, we all kind of have our story. We all have our reasons why. We're all just trying to do the best we can with what we know until we know better. But like, a lot of these women who are so self-empowered and disempowering men in the process, it's not empowerment. It's ego. It's fear. It's pride. It's shame. It's judgment. It's bitterness. It's resentment. It's ugly. It's not, there's nothing beautiful about it. Even the whole Me Too movement and all of this stuff. I know I'm being so countercultural right now and saying all of this, but like, it's trash. It's divisive. It's not unifying. It's not redemptive. It's not restorative. There's nothing good or healthy that comes from that. We need to honor the reality that in the beginning, God created humans in God's image and likeness, and he created us male and female. One is not more valuable. One is not more powerful. One is not more necessary than the other. Both of us embody the divine in our own unique way. And in order to, I think, fully understand God, we have to fully understand the beauty and value of both genders and how they're meant to come together and complement one another. And so I'm very anti the feminist movement. I'm not anti equal rights. I'm not anti, women having the right to vote or equal. I'm not anti basic human rights at all. But the feminist movement began to turn into something very ugly in the 60s and 70s. And it became more emasculating and it became more sexualized, and women literally started to try to become men. That's the type of feminism that I have a problem with, because there's nothing natural or healthy or beneficial from that. And now, all these decades later, we're living in the residual mess of it all. And it's time for us to clean up the mess. So, some of my favorite resources on these topics, Shanti Faldahan, she wrote a book that I read probably 10 or 11 years ago, and it's called For Women Only. And she also wrote a book called For Men Only. And I would highly recommend this book. I read this book For Women Only when I was coming out of my second divorce. And I remember when I read this book, it was very humbling and it led me to a lot of repentance, because I realized that some of, not all of, but some of the issues that I had experienced in both of my failed marriages was that I was expecting my husband to be my best girlfriend. And men are wired differently than women, and we can't expect our men to be women. And so, because I had these expectations, then I was creating these frustrations. And so it helped me realize how I was showing up in dynamic with men that was creating unnecessary problems. So Shanti Feldahan, For Women Only, For Men Only, I would highly recommend those books. Another woman that has greatly impacted my life is Alison Armstrong. She wrote a couple of books. One is The Keys to the Kingdom, and another is The Queen's Code. And she's actually writing her third book right now. She has a few other books out, but like her big books is she's writing a King's Code, which I'm really excited. I really want to have Alison Armstrong come on my podcast someday. I really want to have her on this podcast because this woman has been studying men for 30 years, and she talks about men in the most gracious and beautiful way. And she helps you shift your lens of understanding them to where you can begin to really appreciate the things that you probably misunderstood beforehand, and the things that made them feel big and scary, she helps you see as strong and valuable. So Alison Armstrong, you can probably YouTube her, AlisonArmstrong.com. That's her website. She's got so many resources. And then there's this new book that I just got because I heard this woman on a podcast. She wrote a book called The Empowered Wife. And I really, really liked her. Everything she talked about, Laura Doyle. So, when it comes to like relationship with men, whether you're dating, another book that I'm doing right now by Dr. Henry Cloud wrote a book called How to Get a Date Worth Keeping. I'm reading his book right now. I think, unfortunately, in the religious Christian world, especially back in the 90s and early 2000s, which was like when I was kind of coming up in my young adult life, there were books like I Kissed Dating Goodbye by Joshua Harris. And there was just such a bad teaching around relationships and dating. And it set a lot of us up for failure. But this book, How to Get a Date Worth Keeping by Dr. Henry Cloud, is actually really good. It's bringing a lot of healing into my heart and like helping me look at things in a much healthier way. So if you're single, I would recommend that book. If you're wanting to work on yourself and how you connect with men, I would recommend those 3 other resources and authors. But I think, whether you have a father, whether you have a grandfather, whether you have a husband, whether you have a brother, whether you have a son, like as women, us learning how to see and understand and appreciate men for who they are, and learning how to bring out the best in them is probably the greatest gift that we can give them. And we're not going to learn it from society. We're not going to learn it from our culture. And so we have to actively go out and find teachers that God has sent into this time period for us to learn from. And those are just a few resources that have really helped me along the way. So,
Thank you.
yeah,
Yeah, thank you so much.
yeah. And we have to get good at getting uncomfortable
Yeah.
and doing the uncomfortable thing. and being okay with missing the mark and being gracious with others when they miss the mark too. And if we don't know how to do something, we just have to learn. Like the majority of relationships is just skill sets that we didn't learn in childhood that we can develop in adulthood. We can learn how to communicate better. You can create chemistry. If you're in a marriage and it's been a long time and you feel like the chemistry is that chemistry is something you can actually create. You can learn how to spark that back. You don't have to divorce your husband because there's no more chemistry. Connection. You can learn how to recreate that connection that got lost. So like there's always hope for relationship. It just takes effort. And honestly, I think most of it is we have to learn how to relate with ourselves differently. If we're not relating with others well, it's normally because of our own personal stuff. So when you start working on your relationship with yourself, how you think, how you process your feelings, what you do when you're triggered, what your beliefs are, your limiting beliefs are, that starts to overflow into how you then relate with others. If you don't know your needs, how can a man meet your needs? Right? Like
Yeah.
if you don't have healthy boundaries, of course you're going to feel burnt out and burdened and resentful. So it really does start with you learning how to relate with yourself well, and then learning how to share yourself and express yourself in a more vulnerable and less controlling, cynical way with others. Mariah?
Yeah, so to that point, and to add, because earlier I said how I had been abandoned by a man, my dad, whatever. But through all of the healing and getting out of that feministic mindset, first of all, have a husband, have a loving husband, I'm happily married, but also it's helped me to heal my relationship with my dad. And not to say that I'm perfect or he's perfect, but like I've been able to take my own accountability and be able to express my needs and manage my expectations for that relationship. And yeah, so that's not to say that just because you've been hurt by men or hurt by one specific man that if you go through your healing that it's still gonna be that way because there's always hope for the relationships to change and grow and become healthier. So, yeah, that just reminded me of that too. Like, it was
Yeah.
important to add.
Well, and that's so big with the living beautifully culture also is a lot of the time in therapy or whatever, or even just culturally, this cancel culture, it's you just cut people out. But living beautifully, we value reconciliation. So we don't cut difficult relationships out of our lives. We try to figure out how can we reconcile those relationships. And again, it can't always happen. It can't always happen, but most of the time it can if both parties are willing. So, and you can't I say it all the time, but you can't change another person, but you can change a dynamic. Absolutely can change a dynamic. So, and I think at the end of the day, you guys, like we all want to love and be loved. All of us do. We all want to feel seen and heard and known and valued. We all want connection. We all want those things. Sometimes we just have to be willing to be vulnerable enough to be maybe the first one to let our guard down and try something new, you know? But it
Mhm.
helps when you remind yourself, well, they want this too. They might not know how to do it. I don't know how to do it. But maybe if I try, they'll start meeting and matching my efforts.
Yeah.
So I think 95% of the time, there's hope for relationships to be reconciled in some measure. Maybe not what our dream relationship would be, but there can be a measure of reconciliation. And then you can grow from that.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Any final thoughts, comments, questions, or reflections? I think we're probably going to tick some people off with this one, but that's okay.
So good.
That's so good.
Yeah.
It all started with Claire talking about women moving on to commune.
I
And
know.
like,
I get all the juicy gossip from working in a hair salon. I hear it all.
Keep bringing the juicy gossip, girl. Keep bringing the juicy. You're keeping it relevant. You're keeping us relevant. Yeah. All right. Well, until next week, Mariah, are there any announcements? You know
February.
what we should do in the holding space for February? February, if you're watching this or listening to this and it's February, we're going to be holding our monthly holding space on February 17th at 6:30 to 8 Pacific Standard Time. If you have not yet joined the holding space, it is kind of like a women's circle. It's a growth group. It's a virtual gathering of women. We just had our first one in January and it was a hit. It was definitely a success. I got so much good feedback from the women who attended that. And it's just a safe place for us to come together and do some honest self-reflecting and maybe expand our paradigms a little bit and maybe learn to think about things in a new way and maybe walk away with some new skills that we can practice. And it's just a place where you can come and let your armor down and you can be poured into and nurtured, because I know you're probably pouring into and taking care of so many other people. And it's important that you have people pouring into and taking care of you. So this is just a free service that we offer from Living Beautifully, from us to you. And we hope that you can join us live. And if you can't join us live, you can always get the link to watch the replay. But go to beautifulasLifestyle.com and sign up for that there. But maybe in February, we talk about femininity and masculinity. That could be a fun little thing
Yeah.
to explore within
Mm-hmm.
ourselves.
Yeah.
Mariah's all you. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, until next week,
Ciao.
ciao for now. Bye.